Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Farnborough International Air Show outside London, one of the world's most important air shows with defense leaders from around the world, military officers, industry executives, and aircraft from all around the planet. On this, the Royal Air Force's 100th anniversary, the Royal Air Force, the world's first independent air force. Our coverage here is sponsored by Leonardo DRS and Farnborough International, and it's my absolute honor to interview Tom Enders, the CEO of Airbus, an old friend, somebody who I've had an opportunity to cover for a very long time, and somebody who is retiring at the end of the year. Tom, great to see you, and congratulations on your impending retirement.
Thanks for announcing my retirement at the end of the year. Actually, it's planned only for April next year, but...
oh my God, okay, I apologize for that.
I will think about it, Vago. I'll think about it.
I'm not trying to push you out the door any sooner than you have to go. Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, there's all sorts of jobs you can do, including putting your feet up for a little while. You have been at the helm of the company at a very, very interesting time. You know, you get a lot of credit for helping the transformation of Airbus into a unitary, single, non-government, state-owned company. But I want to start with something important, which is the Brexit question. You've been vocal on issues that involve Airbus. We just had Guito Bebb, the procurement minister, resign in part because of a continuing debate within the British government on soft Brexit or hard Brexit. We don't know what Monsieur Barnier, the negotiator for the European Union, is going to say about any of these proposals. From your standpoint, it's going to happen. From an Airbus perspective, what's the right, and a European industrial perspective, what's the right way for it to happen? What's the wrong way for it to happen?
Well, we did think 10 days ago when the Chequers agreement came out that this was heading in the right direction. I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, this discussion inside the government is really troubling. Not so much that they lost the great foreign minister Boris Johnson, but the severe challenge that Theresa May obviously faces within her own party. Well, I mean, we as industry can draw only one conclusion. We have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But we have to prepare for the worst. We have to draw up contingency plans, which is what we actually done in order to make sure that in a situation that might not be a soft Brexit, as people call it, but a hard and disorderly Brexit, we can safeguard our industrial interest as much as possible, and that is very much focused on the supply chain.
As you look at it, on top of all of that, there's now a transatlantic trade war. It started with steel and aluminum. It's expanded since. There are a lot of Buy American calls on the U.S. side and America First calls. In this environment, talk to us about that dynamic, given that material costs are rising for everybody.
Well, I would still hope that we are only on the verge of a trade war, that we are not yet really into a trade war. And I would very much appreciate if American colleagues would speak out perhaps a little bit more clearly about that, because as everybody in the industry knows, there will be no winners. And we've seen already by some reactions in the U.S. industry, talk about Harley-Davidson, that the results are probably not what the intentions were when President Trump started that. This is not good news to industry at large. It's certainly not good news to aviation, which is very, very global, has been since decades. And I still hope that reasonable people will prevail and convince this U.S. administration to not further escalate that situation.
But how can, you mentioned supply chains being the most important. Everybody is operating on a hyper-efficient level. Everything is just in time. I mean, the Toulouse factory and all your factories and factories everywhere in the world are models for efficiency where landing gear arrive at a certain time. Otherwise, the guys at Safran pay, Philippe Petit-Colin pays a penalty if the landing gear doesn't arrive on time. Fortunately, he has them arriving on time. What are the implications here in the event that this gets worse?
Well, as I said, we need to prepare for ourselves, but there's no perfect preparation. There's no perfect answer. We'll probably have to look at the installment of buffers. That means more spend on inventories. And this could eventually become pretty costly for industry, for the main manufacturers, but also for the supply chain. And again, I would hope that not only a couple of people and companies speak up clearly, as we've done in case of Brexit, there's a larger threat here that's called protectionism. That didn't start just with the American president Trump. It started already 2008 after the Lehman crisis, at the end of the Doha round, etc. But it comes slowly. We were able to adapt. If this trade war thing, as you call it, really explodes around us, that will be a far more serious situation and will hit aviation. It will hit air traffic eventually. We don't see that so far. That's a good thing. So there's a lot of optimism still, I think, in the world that this situation, the trade war at large, can be avoided. But we know aviation is very volatile. Air traffic reacts on crises, oil price hikes, and military conflicts and trade wars. Yes.
Let me ask you a broader question about President Trump and his policies. Obviously, the president has been very vocal about European governments needing to spend more. All European governments and NATO member nations are spending more. But one of the other demands, as the president and his supporters put it, is spend more, spend it on U.S. arms, give the U.S. trade concessions, you get security in return. That message has gone down badly with our allies who look at this as a treaty obligation and not a transactional relationship. And European leaders have told me over and over again, if we're going to spend more, we're going to spend it more in the United States. Spend it more, maybe not on U.S. weapons, but actually more on European solutions. You had Europe's and one of the world's leading aerospace and defense industrial companies. From that standpoint, do you think that as European governments spend more, they're going to direct it more toward Europe, and this gives Europe an opportunity to coalesce the way leaders have called for a very long time, which is Europe to preserve its sovereign capabilities?
Well, Leo, you might be surprised, but this gives me the occasion to defend President Trump. I think he's right on one thing. Europe is not spending enough on defense. That's blatantly clear. If we take the EU, average spending is 1.5% of GDP. Germany even is only at 1.2, and the US is around 3.5 or something like that. So obviously, and that is not a new situation. That needs to be corrected. President Trump is just the first president who blatantly and openly talks about that. And I think that's helpful. I think a lot of people inside NATO, inside Europe, are now rethinking their defense spending, and that is a good thing. It should have happened long time ago. The way he does it, in this very confrontational, with his very confrontational method, does not necessarily help. And I mean, if people in general were in favor of more defense spending, you read the European polls, you could see that in recent years. But people said, yes, there's so much uncertainty and threats and risk outside, we need to do more on that side. Now that the president is threatening the Europeans with the defense spending, so to say, it can be counterproductive. Well, from an industry point of view, it's a good thing that defense spending decrease, a situation that we had for many years, has now come to a stop, and that the defense budgets in coming years will at least rise, not spectacularly, but they will rise. And I think, yes, I mean, we have a lot of capable European defense companies. We have a lot of equipment, a lot of solutions that we can offer. I would still hope, as you know, as somebody who has been transatlanticist for his whole professional life, that we will also find in the future solutions where we pool requirements and solutions between both sides of Atlantic, that we're not getting it either European or American. For instance, like in the commercial area where we have American engines, of course, also on our planes, and European engines and something like that. I don't think we would be well advised on both sides of Atlantic if we had a kind of a hard split. It's them against us. But again, I think, yes, there will be additional defense spending. There will be additional projects. Think about the Franco-German fighter project. The Brits revealed another project yesterday with European partners. I hope that eventually this will coalesce into one project that would be good for the industry and that would be good for taxpayers.
Do you know at this point what that would look like? What kind of airplane you think Europe needs, especially, or the world maybe needs, especially at a time when many of these countries are putting the F-35 into service now?
I have no clue, and we are at very early stages here. I mean, governments are talking about a replacement for Tornadoes and other aircraft, 2035 earliest, 2040. That gives us time to bring our various industrial concepts and approaches together. That gives us time to convince also governments that we should have not two or three, but one European approach. The only thing we do know, and I see very clearly, is that we're not just talking about one aircraft, one flying platform, but a system, the future combat air system, which will certainly have manned and unmanned platforms and other features. So it's not just an aircraft program in the future. That, I think, is the right way to go.
As you look 10 years out in the future, what do you see? What does the industrial landscape look like, particularly from a European standpoint? Is there going to be more consolidation, do you think?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. I mean, with all the acceleration that's happening around us, it's even difficult to foresee what the landscape will look like in 5 years. I'm saying that also because there is such a acceleration in technologies that come in. Digitalization will play a big role. We see it in commercial aircraft now that digital solutions will breed new services business, will breed new ways on how we develop aircraft, how we manufacture aircraft in a much more coherent digital way. We have to reckon that there's new competition coming up from Asia, particularly from China. These people don't have all the old baggage that we carry around with us, old production systems and so on and so on. We see it in military already. Look at the UAVs that the Chinese manufacturers are offering all over the world. So I would think that the future in general in aerospace, like it or not, will be much more Asian.
You have had an incredible tenure. You drove the company again into much more of a single integrated company. Folks saw it not as extensions of state companies, but actually a profit-driven, normal company, as a lot of folks in the city would say, and even folks on Wall Street started to regard it. You championed the Transatlantic link for Airbus to start playing big time in the U.S. market in 2 tanker competitions, made some very, very important acquisitions, NVIDIA and a number of other companies in the U.S.
Settled down in Mobile.
And I was going to say you championed the Alabama facility,
Yes,
which at the time people said you were crazy to do, and you did it, and it's going to be strategically successful for you. As you look back on your career, what did you think you got right? What did you think you got wrong? I think I can think of BAE deal maybe that didn't work out. But tell us also what your proudest achievement was.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure we have enough time here to tell you particularly what all went wrong in all these years. Yeah, sure enough, we achieved some things. We failed on others. You're right. The integration of a company is probably a big achievement, but that was not made by one or two men. It was a real team effort. We were very lucky that particularly the last 5-10 years we had strong support from our board as well, the independent board. Well, I mean, if we look back, internationalization of a company, I think, has been very important. Sometimes I ask myself, I go, did it really need that much time until that was achieved? Why did we take more than 10 or 15 years to do this integration job? But every idea has its time, and I think it was as fast as we could do it. I'm proud of, as I said, the internationalization, putting final assembly line in China. That was the first final assembly we did, large commercial aircraft outside Europe. Equally proud of what we did in Mobile, because that was really a strategic decision in the sense of it cannot be wrong to be strongly industrially present in the most important markets of the world. It makes us perhaps today a little bit less vulnerable than we would be without that strong American footprint.
That's right, because you're an American manufacturer now.
We are an American manufacturer, absolutely, and we're just adding to that. I mean, the former C series, now the Airbus 220, will also be manufactured back-to-back in the Mobile facility. So the folks down there are pretty proud and excited about it, as they should be. The decision on the Neo, I think, was important. The alternative would have been to kick off a new single-aisle program. That would have cost the industry north of $12 billion for sure. We were able to develop that aircraft with a fraction of that money. That was certainly also a very important decision. And, go on. Biggest failure, perhaps, yes, was the link up with BAE. In my career, I think I tried to do this 3 times. Third time we were not lucky. We failed again, and I don't know whether my successors will ever try that again, but it would have made a lot of sense because the company would have established even stronger links across the channel. And imagine this situation there, we have this threat of Brexit. It would not be a bad thing to have a industry, a company, hopefully a couple of others, who would keep us together. And I really think that we should try very hard in Europe. I have no doubt that the Brexit will happen, to keep the ties, the security and defense ties, very close with our British friends. That's in the interest of the EU, that's in the interest of the UK, and it's the interest of industry, and not just in aircraft, but also on the space side. Galileo comes to mind. It would be absolutely stupid to kick the Brits out of Galileo.
Let me take you to strategy. You're a student of strategy, and you and I have had this conversation over time about what's the right balance between profit and investment. If you look at it, a lot of Wall Street and the city has enormous pressure that it puts on CEOs in order to deliver dividends or buybacks or all of that stuff. Whereas you would always tell me that it's also an obligation, especially of a CEO who has sort of an international trust, if you will, in terms of an Airbus, which is important for all of Europe, both from a technology standpoint and industrial standpoint. Talk to us about the right balance, getting that balance right between how much you're investing and not return so much to shareholders that you find yourself on the back foot when you need to put that kind of heavyweight investment that's required, as in the case of a major aircraft manufacturer or a defense contractor.
Well, that's a hard one. I think you and I know there's no exact formula for that. You cannot say, look at that and do it like that percentages, etc. I think over the years we were able to kind of strike a good balance between return to shareholders and investing into new technology. And if you're criticized by both, by shareholders as well as by important other stakeholders like unions, that the one says you're investing too much into innovation, the other says not enough, you seem to be doing something right. And if I look at what Airbus has been doing and is doing right now, investing into electrification of aviation at large, investing into autonomy, investing into artificial intelligence, even quantum computing, stuff like that will be vitally important for the future of the industry. Investing into data. I'm for one convinced that data in the next decade, already in the 2020s, will play a larger role in propelling the industry forward than traditional aerospace skills. Yes, we still need these traditional aerospace skills, but if I just look at the rate of employing young data researchers, scientists, data analysts, and in related professions, it demonstrates how quickly this industry is transforming. And I think there's an enormous opportunity to reach out for new horizons, so to say, in the industry and also technology. And I find this very exciting. This is a perfect time to join the industry. And if I was 40 years younger, I would join exactly that same industry again.
Let me ask you 2 quick questions before Martin gives us the hook. First, you have a reputation for leadership. When the A400M was under development, you jumped from the airplane to show that it was hard. Tom is a reserve German Army major and paratrooper. But there also have been 2 allegations of corruption, and there are 2 investigations that are ongoing. I know you've taken this very, very seriously. I know there's a lot you can't say about it, but from your perspective, you guys self-reported on each of these instances. Tell us what has been learned and how you've put some structure in place to make sure that if something did go wrong, it doesn't go wrong again.
Well, you never can be 100% sure with all the preparations you've been taking, and actually, I mean, it's not like we have discovered compliance a couple of years ago when we did the self-reporting. I think we started to put serious compliance measures and policies and training into place at least 10 years ago. But we discovered at some point that this had been not sufficient and consequentially not putting things under the rug, but reporting that to the authorities. And this is how it all started. Now, these things take time. It take years of investigations, and I'm not making any predictions here. But the lesson learned is that you have to not just hire somebody who drafts policies for you or training schedules, etc. You really have to make a very thorough effort throughout the entire company to change the culture or to adapt the culture and make everybody conscious. And this is not just about agents or business partners. In our case, this is really about having the proper culture in the company, that people understand how important it is, that how quickly you can ruin a great brand with compliance issues. We've seen it in other companies in the industry. We're going through this. I mean, we are no exception. It will be tough, and will require a lot of change in the company. But I'm absolutely sure, Vego, that at the end of it, we'll come out of this a stronger, a more competitive, a cleaner company, and a much better company than we were in the past.
One last question. You are a committed transatlanticist.
Yeah.
You are a mutual friend and mentor, Manfred von Nordheim.
Yeah.
We used to have this conversation very, very often about how important this link is. Do you think now, at a time when there is so much concern about the transatlantic future, that everybody took it for granted and hasn't fought enough to make the case why it's important, even for the global international rules-based order? Is it something that folks who should have been making a better case maybe need to, get engaged and make the case why this is so important, whether it's for the average German, average American, or French or whoever? But at the end of the day, it's so important. Do folks have to do a better job making this case about how important this is?
I think it is. I think we all realize that we are at a very dangerous point right now. But I think the true Atlanticists also differentiate. They don't say America is abandoning us. They don't even say the U.S. administration is abandoning us. The focus is on the White House, and I think that's a very important distinction here. But I do think that business has to become more vocal about the situation and not just look at short-term benefits, and maybe short-term benefits of the current policies, but look at the longer-term implications, and particularly in aerospace, because we are a business with long cycles. It's a business where you really need to develop long-term strategies. And I think we all in aviation and in the aerospace industry tremendously benefited from international cooperation, from globalization. Look, we are the largest foreign buyer of U.S. aerospace goods, roughly 17 billion each year, and it goes both ways. So, and we need to be careful that the industry does not just stay mute because we think, oh, there's some short-term benefits in exports and here and there. Look at the long-term horizon, and then I think everybody would agree, at least in aerospace industry, we need to speak up, and we need to speak up for international cooperation, globalization, and particularly for a vital and for vibrant transatlantic relationship.
And any retirement plans already, even though I got your retirement wrong, if you're going to...
As I said, I think about it. Maybe I should retire a little earlier. No, look, there's plenty of stuff to do, but one thing I can assure you of, I will not hang on in the industry. I'm very happy. I was incredibly lucky and privileged to come into this position and to shape the company together with a great team for many years. There's so many exciting things to do in this world, and I don't think I will be boring. And I reassure you, I will not spend all my time jumping from aircraft.
Tom Enders, CEO of Airbus. Sir, thanks very much, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure covering you for a couple of years. And hey, we may need a correspondent in Germany, so you're more than welcome to join us.
Thanks for that. Okay.